Hello everybody and welcome back to Aurora 4X. I of course am Sir Beardian, and in this episode we are going to be setting up our initial empire. Now before we do that, I'm going to be doing the little semi-transnewtonian, semi-conventional start. And I'm also going to show you how to spend those initial research points if you choose to receive them. So first things first, you want to go into your main game menu and go to Space Master on. You'll get this password prompt, whether you have a password or not. If you do not, just leave it blank. If you do enter it in, hit OK. Fairly straightforward. The only indication the Space Master is on is this little SM right here. So if you see this, Space Master is on. If you do not, it is not. There's a few little buttons that will appear in some places when you do have it on. Where is it? It's supposed to be this. Oh, right. I haven't refreshed it. Where is it? There's supposed to be a... I can't find it. Let me just reopen it. Okay. So, first things first, in research, you will have a little display right here with your research points that you have spare. When you have none, or less than 0, you will see nothing, but it appears around here, and it will show you how many research points you have left. Now, the only tech that I'm actually going to get is going to be... where is it? Transnewtonian is here. Space Master turns on these two buttons here, Instant and Instant RST. Instant is RST stands for race specific tech, so this is for things like weapons, engines, basic components that you have designed. But Instant will instantly research and unlock the selected technology, Transnewtonian. We're going to instant that, and yes. Okay, so that has unlocked all the other technologies that we are now going to get our scientist to do. Since that's all we need Space Master for, we shall go ahead and turn it off. There we go. Space Master is now off. And we are back to normal. So, what are we doing first? Well, first things first, let's take a look at what we have. We're going to continue a little bit with the UI, and we're going to walk through the population and production windows and show you what's what. First things first, again, we're going to start from the top left, work our way to the bottom right. Empire list, this will always be you. If you have Space Master on and multiple player empires, you will be able to switch between them. If you have the developer designer mode, you'll be able to switch to all the others. Otherwise, you can ignore this. Get time controls up the top as well, same ones as here, but you do not get to control the sub-pulse length. That is only in the F3 menu. Down here you will see a list of your populated systems and populations. Currently the only one is our capital. It will also tell you what population is actually on here. In the current version, single species can only exist in a single colony, but you can have multiple colonies per body, so keep that in mind. This checkbox hides civilian mining colonies, and this one groups by function instead of location. Independence, never do this on the capital, but it will take a colony and turn it into a player-controlled empire separate from your current one. Along the bottom we have capital, which will turn the selected body into a capital. Rename will rename the population. This will take you to the production overview. This will take you to the sector view. This will let you transfer the population to another empire. Obviously, never do this with your only capital. This refreshes the window. Geological status is, well, it'll take you to your geo systems. Design will take you to your research, or to your component design, turret design, and missile design. Abandon will, of course, completely delete the entire colony on the body. So, once again, do not do that to your only colony. Close button is close. That's fine. Up here, you will see your racial wealth. As long as this doesn't hit 0 or go below, you're not going to have problems. If it goes below, you're going to lose production modifier. I'll get to that in a moment. Your planetary and sector governors. Planetary governors will provide their full bonus to the planet. Sector governors will provide 1/4 bonus to the planet, but they will provide it to every colony in their entire sector. This is your colony display. It will tell you almost everything you will ever need to know about your colony. Political status, Imperial is full rights. Every population that gets conquered will be a conquered one and will have no rights. Event over time, it will erase to Imperial population, provided that you do not stop it from doing so. You will see political status production modifier. Each level of political status will increase or decrease by 20%. So Imperial population is 100%. Each level below that will decrease it by 20% down to basically 0 of a conquered population. Species tells you what you are. Suitability cost or colony cost is essentially how difficult it is to live on the planet that you're in. So it's how difficult it is for this species to live on the planet that this colony is on. 0 means not at all. Anything, the higher it goes, the more difficult it is. Very important that you keep track of this to keep an eye on what kind of planets you want to build colonies on. Administration level, the larger a planet, the more complicated, the larger it is, and the more stuff is on it, the higher the administration level. That comes down to which planetary governors can actually govern the planet. If they're not good enough to manage a planet, they cannot be assigned as a governor. How much wealth the colony produces per year in terms of taxes. Population is your total population. Now, depending on colony cost, you get a different breakdown in percentages between agriculture and environmental, in other words, feeding and keeping your population alive in the first place. Service industries, which is shopping malls, car parks, managing the roads, basically everything not to do with agriculture and environmental, and the most important one, manufacturing. Manufacturing is your actual workforce for everything on this side. So on Earth, we have 25 million out of 500 are involved in keeping those 500 alive. 75% are involved with keeping them happy, and 20% are available as actual workforce population, leaving us 100 out of 500 million available as workers, and the population grows by 2.52%. Now, the higher the suitability cost, the more it shifts away from manufacturing and service into agriculture and environmental. At about colony cost of 8, I believe it is, somewhere around there, your manufacturing drops to 0%. So whether you have one person on the colony or 300 billion on the colony, nobody will be available to work for your buildings. So if you are intending to colonize and potentially terraform a planet for use, and it has a high enough colony cost that manufacturing gets 0, you will not be able to have that population do anything for you until the colony cost is reduced. Keep that in mind. It will also shift a little bit as the colony grows up to around, I believe, 10 or 15 million. It will initially start off with a huge agriculture, environmental, and service with the minimal manufacturing, and it will slowly shift to what it is here and as it reaches that population point. Popular annual growth rate will also decrease as population keep that. It's just something to keep in mind. So smaller colonies will grow faster in terms of percentage than larger colonies. Huge colonies, however, that 2.5, because because there is an actual floor, that 2.5 will eventually settle on that floor if it's not on the floor already, which I think it might be. And that 2.5 of the population will be much higher than the 10 or so that it can get of a small colony. So giant colonies for growth are better than tiny ones, even though they have a high growth rate. Infrastructure required per million population. Once again, this will tell you how much infrastructure you actually need to live on the planet if the colony cost is above 0. As it's 0, that is all blanked and there is no maximum. Next, manufacturing sector workdown. This is how much of your 100 million are in where. So we have 1.1 million working in our shipyards, 250,000 in our maintenance facilities, 50 million working construction, and 5 as scientists. Now, it is important to note, even though you're not researching anything, 50 million are still in your labs. They're sitting around on their thumbs, doing absolutely nothing for you. So you still have to employ them, whether you're using them or not. So use them. Workers, after everything's subtracted, we have 43.65 million. So we can, if we were to double our construction capacity, we would run out of workers. So it's important to keep track of your workers. That comes down to if you run out of workers, you start taking penalties to manufacturing efficiency modifier, and that will slowly drop as this gets higher. So try not to run out of workers, because as this drop is, if any of these modifiers drop, it affects everything on the colony. Industry, mining, research, unit production, everything that this colony does will be affected by these modifiers. So try to keep them at 100%. Protection level is, the bigger the colony grows, the more they want protection. This is in terms of unmodeled piracy that goes on, gangs and cartels and all of that jazz. How much the colony wants protection from those. This every ship weapon provides PPV, which is protection value, and it is system-wide. So any protection value in the entire system will be allocated to the actual protection level to every colony in that system, whether it's armed, functional, or not. Capitals ignore this value. So regardless of how much protection value, regardless of that difference, you will always have this completely ignored for capitals. So keep your capital until you have enough PPV to protect it, if you want to move it. That is here, this modifier here, I believe, political stability modifier. If that's too low, that starts dropping and you start getting unrest. Well, unrest is what brings this down, but that will raise unrest. Wealth modifies this one. Tectonics, Earth-like, you can basically ignore this. It has no actual effect on the colony at all, and this will tell you whether a geo-team survey has been completed or not. Earth always starts with it completed, or Australia 2.0. On the right side, you have your installation list. We currently have a level 1 academy, so we have one academy. We have level 1 deep space tracking station, which is a thermal sensor of this strength. So level 1, 250. We have 250 strength. We can maintain 1,000 ton ships in orbit. Maintenance facility can maintain any number of ships as long as they are at or below this level, 1,000 tons. 1,000 tons is not a lot, so we're going to have to raise this. Breakdown of what we have. So we have one shipyard with one slipway, 5 maintenance facilities, which provide the 1,000 tons, 1,000 conventional industry, which is a jack of all trades, but otherwise generally garbage, 5 labs, and 1 ground force training facilities, which is basically just boot camps. We have 0 fuel and 2,000 maintenance supplies. We have, now, based on our buildings and our population, the thermal and EM signatures of the colony will go up. So we have 8,020 EM thermal signature and 30,835 EM signature. Because, you know, we have 500 million people who are all watching TV and using radios and basically just being extremely noisy on the EM spectrum. Next, we have our industry, which is all of our planetary production. So we can build maintenance supplies, we can refit PDCs, assemble PDCs, prefab PDCs, build PDCs in orbital habitats. We have ship components that we can pre-build. We can build fighters, we can build missiles, we can build actual installations. I'll cover each one of these as we actually need to use them, but we're going to start with the installations first. First things first, we have 1,000 conventional industry, which provides 1,000 construction. 1,000 construction is absolute trash. First thing we want to do is we want to convert our conventional industry into basically anything else. So, construction factories are first and foremost. We're going to build 500 of them. So, we're going to start with 25% of our production capacity to that. 25% is going to go to mines, and we are going to build 300 of those. So now we have 800 conventional industry that are going to be absorbed into better things. We do need some fuel refinery. Let's start with 25 of those. And we are going to start with 75 ordnance factory. Ordnance factories produce missiles down here. Fighter factories produce fighters. So if you want to produce if you want to be using missiles, you need ordnance factories. If you want to be producing fighters, you need fighter factories. Don't forget to build them, otherwise you will not be able to build those ships or ordnance. Next, what do we need? Well, we are going to need... Actually, no, we've only used 900 of our conventional industries. What else can we do? You know what? Make it 400. Okay, so we are now converting all 1,000 of our conventional industry. I'm wondering if we should keep this. If we should keep this at 300 and get 100 extra ordnance factories. No, ordnance factories are cheap. They're fine. Okay. Next, what do we need? Well, these are going to use up a conventional industry, but as I said, 1,000 tons of maintenance is absolutely nothing. So we are going to need to increase that. So maintenance facilities. Now, each maintenance facility maintains 250 tons, and we are going to need a lot more maintenance. So let's go for, if we want to get eventually around 20,000 tons. So 5 times 20 is 2,000? 200. 200. 5 times 20 is 200. No, it's not. 100. Hang on. 250 times 100 is 25,000. You know what? That'll do. Okay. We're going to get 100 maintenance facilities. But make it 95 because we already have 5 of them. Okay. That's going to give us a substantial amount of maintenance. That's good. Next. We want a couple of mass drivers. Mass drivers shuttle around or sling around. Ooh, actually, I just realized something. We have a stockpile of almost nothing. Ah, that's fine. Mass drivers sling around resources and minerals within a system. They are extraordinarily useful. I always try and keep a few. Because it will severely cut down on the amount of fuel that your freighters are going to have to need to manage. Military academies are extremely useful. They increase how many officers you get and how quickly you build up leaders. So we're going to want a couple of military academies. Let's go for 3 to begin with. We are also eventually going to need We don't have a spaceport. We don't need a spaceport. We are going to need a couple of civilian, commercial shipyard complexes. So yeah, let's bring a. We need freighter. We need tanker. We need surveyor. Surveyor can go naval. We need tanker, freighter. Not miner. I'm gonna do that differently. Tanker, freighter. That's about it. That's all we really need at the moment. Let's build three. Let's build three. Tanker, freighter, and a spare. Because we will need more stuff. Terraformer, for example. But except, no, we're going to use it differently. It's fine. Three. We can always build more. And we are... What do we have at the moment? We have one naval. So we're definitely going to need lots more of these. So let's go for 4 of those. Okay. We are definitely going to need lots and lots of labs. Now, we can't convert conventional industry into labs because industry, it's industry, not science. But we are definitely going to need lots of labs. Right now, we only have 5. Let's go for 15 more. There we go. And we are... Do we have academies? Yes, we have academies. We are going to need a bunch of Grand Force training facilities. So let's go for... We have 1... Let's go for 14 more. That looks good. That looks a good amount. Now, why are we getting these specifically? So you need lots of construction. Construction is one of the cornerstones of your empire. Without construction, you can't build squat. So you have to have construction. Fairly straightforward. Mines dig up your minerals. Without them, your empire grinds to a halt. Obviously, we need these as well. So mines are a given. Fuel, again. Without fuel, your ships stop. So fuel is essential. We need a bunch of refineries. Makes sense. And ordnance, we are potentially going to be using missiles, so we're going to use those. Now, so we want a lot of these. Refineries produce a lot of fuel each, but until you actually start running military, you don't need a lot of fuel. So we don't need very much of them, especially because they do produce a lot each. Ordnance 75 is a good starting amount, but we will definitely need more later on. But 75 is fine for now. We're probably going to want to bring that up to about 400 over time, but we will do those later. Maintenance facilities I already talked about. We want to get that maintenance value up nice and high so we can maintain nice, decently sized warships, because early on your warships are going to be big. 10 mass drivers will be enough to set up a couple of colonies. You only need 1 mass driver to receive, so only 1 mass driver has to sit on Earth, which gives us 9 to distribute out. Each mass driver can sling 5,000 minerals a year. None of them gives us 45,000 minerals a year. That's a good amount to start with. We will be building more, but that's a good amount to start with. Military academies, I always build up to 4. 4 is a good amount. It gets you a good amount of officers, and it gives you a good amount of leaders coming in that you don't get flooded, but you have a good amount for your ships. Once again, we will expand this later. Commercial shipyards, naval shipyards, obviously we're going to be using those to build ships. Fairly straightforward. You have a rough idea of how big your naval fleet is going to be. Well, at least you will once you start playing, but 4 to 5 is a good amount to start with. So, geo surveyor, missile ship, point defense ship, gun ship, maybe a command ship or a sensor ship. That's 5 ships right there, right? And I'll go through all those later on, in a little bit later, but those are the kinds of ships that you're going to want to start off with, so you need those naval yards quick. Things like carriers and fancy ships, super fast gunships, they're not really that viable early on, so you don't need to get that naval shipyard up for them immediately, so that's why we're not going to be build those. They're a little bit more mid-game that you want to run those. Labs, obviously, we need lots. 15 is a good amount to start with. That could bring us up to 20. We're going to be building lots more of these. So this could literally be anything. It doesn't really matter. Once we're done with these, we'll just tack on more. Ground Force training facilities. Once again, I like to keep them around round 5. So 15, that's a good amount. We're going to eventually build more, but that'll be fine for now. We don't have any missiles or fighters, so these will obviously be running blank. The next very most important screen is going to be mining and maintenance. So, right now, our ground-based mines are 100. That's a tenth of our conventional industry. That's going to change. All these numbers are going to change. Completely irrelevant. At this moment, we're going to end up with 400 of them, plus the mining rate. We'll come back to that later. But we want to look at what we actually have. So, we have 213,000 uranium. We have 180,000 neutronium, 65 cobamite, 207 tritanium, 57 boronite, 96 macassium, 76 vanderite, a hair under 100 of thorium, 75 iridium, 142 corundium, and 72 gallacite. Now, what the important ones that we need to keep track of. Duranium is used in almost everything. Every major component of a ship, every major component of all ships, most ground troops, and a fair amount of facilities are going to be using duranium. It's essentially the iron and steel of Aurora, all right? You will never not need more uranium. So always be mining uranium. Neutronium is used mainly for shipyards expansion. 180,000 is more than enough for a very long period. We're not going to probably need to look for a source immediately. Cobamite, I believe, is used in missiles. 65,000 is enough. We're not going to need to worry about this for a very long time. Tritanium is used in construction factories, so 200,000 is a good amount. We're going to need more eventually, but the fact that we got 200,000 means that we're going to be good for a long time. Boronite, fuel tanks, I believe. Not much that we have to worry about. 57,000 will do us fine for a while. Macassium is used for two things. Labs, which is 99, which is like 95% of your macassium use is labs, and the rest of it is anything to do with living quarters and stuff like that. So I believe terraformers use macassium, and crew quarters use macassium. Any kind of life support uses macassium, but that's a drop in the bucket compared to your lab use for macassium. 96,000 is a good amount. We will need more, but nothing we have to panic over. So Venderite, 76,000 will be more than enough for a very long time. We're not going to have to worry about that. 100,000 thorium is a good amount. Thorium is used for jump drives and warp gate builders and fuel. The fuel is the biggest one. You're not going to be building too many jump drives, or at least you shouldn't be. You're not going to be building too many jump gate builders, but you are going to be building. You're going to be using fuel. If your thorium runs out, your refineries stop dead. So make sure you always have plenty of thorium available for your fuel production. 99,000, it'll do. At the moment, we're refining. We're getting 2 million liters with 1,000 thorium a year. Right. At our current production, which obviously is not going to stay as it is, at our current production, our thorium reserves are going to last us about 100 years. We are going to be expanding our mining everywhere by then. So as it stands, this is not a concern. Even by increasing it, it's not a concern. The trick to keep in mind with thorium is that the conversion of one thorium to fuel is static across the board. There is literally no way to change it. You can change how fast you convert thorium into fuel, but you cannot change how much fuel you get per thorium. And it's 1,000 to 2 million, so it's about 2,000 to 1. You get about 2,000 fuel per thorium, if my math is right. Yeah, 2,000 fuel per sorium. Iridium is used for, I believe, sensors. 75,000 is huge. We're not going to be worried about that. Corundium and Gallicite. These two are another two to keep a very close eye on. Corundium is almost entirely used for mining. There is very little use for it outside of mining, but mining is the biggest use for it, and if you run out of this, you can't build any more mines. That includes orbital mines and auto mines and regular mines. So all three of those all use 50-50 germanium and corundium, so make sure you always have lots of corundium. 142,000 corundium will do us for now.
Is it corundium or corundum?
Corundium. There is an I in it. Last one is Gallicite. Gallicite is one of those materials that you're fine until you're out, at which point you're screwed. Gallicite is almost entirely used for engines. If you're running a missile game, you're going to have to watch your Gallicite. If you're running a high-speed game, you're going to have to watch your Gallicite. Considering guns, you need high speed, you're basically always going to have to watch your Gallicite. Military ships are going to use a fair amount of it. Commercial ships, less so. The more powerful an engine, the more Gallicite it's going to need. So those are the minerals that we've got. This particular, as I said, this particular amount that we've got is pretty reasonable. There's no major concerns or alarms to be raised, so that is fine. Accessibility is the next thing to cover. Accessibility is essentially a flat multiplier to your final mining rate. So our 1000 production of 0.9 accessibility is going to be producing 900. As you can see, fairly straightforward. Accessibility slowly decreases down to 0.1. 0.1 is the floor. It cannot go below that, but it slowly decreases as you mine out. And you'll see in a couple of years, we're going to have a look, and these are going to be significantly lower. Annual production is just that times that, fairly straightforward. Years to depletion is that divided by that, fairly straightforward. Stockpile is how much we have on world, and this is change in the last increment. This one here is very tricky. So yeah, you want to pick a specific increment time and then use that for your benchmark. But generally speaking, I don't bother looking at this. It's not something you really need to worry about. Master Array plus minus. This one is extremely picky. This will only show sent packets in the. This will only show in the last increment as well. So it'll only show if a packet was sent or received within the last increment. This one can be extremely confusing. Generally speaking, probably nothing you really need to worry about. Stockpile plus production is your stockpile plus how much you're going to produce in the next year. So as you can see, we have a stockpile of 100, we're producing 900, we get 1,000. Fairly straightforward. Projected usage is how much you're going to be using in the next year based on refineries, shipyard consumption, ground unit consumption, basically all the minerals that you're going to be using on this world within the next year. Since the only thing we're going to be using minerals right now is fuel production, thorium is our only projected usage. One of the things that you really want to take note of is this here reserve level. So if I double click this and set it to 1000, this will stop. There's a certain freighter order that says pick up to reserve and mass drivers. These two will keep watch of this level and will not take any minerals that will bring the planet below this level. So if you're building a daisy chain of manufacturing planets and stuff like that, and you need to keep reserves on certain planets at a certain level, so that the driver doesn't instantly ship them off, you want to set the reserve. We're going to set this to 0 because we're not going to be shipping anything off world. Down, and here is where you set your mass driver target if you have a mass driver. This can only, the only things that appear in here are your colonies that currently have a mass driver on them. You cannot use this for bombardment of a hostile planet. So don't even bother. Down here is maintenance consumption of resources. Any military ship that requires maintenance that is being maintained, it consumes 10% of its mineral costs in resources per year. Fairly straightforward. If they're being overhauled, that quadruples. But generally speaking, if they're just being maintained, they produce 10% of their resources. So if it costs you 1,000 uranium to build the ship, it's going to cost you 100 uranium per year to maintain it. So right now we don't have to do anything. It's good to know, but all these numbers are going to change anyway. In the next 33 years. Well, it's going to be less because of producing construction, but all these numbers are going to change, so we don't have to worry about it right now. Shipyards. Right now we have a 1,000-ton naval shipyard. Basically worthless. We're immediately going to start building, we're going to be expanding it. Extra slipways. A shipyard can only work on one ship per slipway. Fairly straightforward. You can also increase tonnage by chunks, or continual expansion, which increases it per production based on its modification rate, which is here. And you can retool for a class. Your first retool is always instant, if not free, because it's assumed that the shipyard was built to build that ship. So your first one is always free, it's always instant, if not free. But you need to tool a shipyard to be able to build that ship, and it's possible to design ships to be similar enough that you can build them when they're tooled for other things. And we'll talk about that much later, because it's a relatively advanced concept. But for now, we're just going to add production. Now, because of essentially what's it called? Compound interest. Because of essential compound interest, you will get your shipyard will expand faster over time if you use smaller increments. Continual expands the fastest over time, but it's a very dangerous thing, because if you forget about it, it will eat all your neutronium and you're going to end up with a 1,000,000-ton shipyard. Fantastic for building a 1,000,000-ton ship, but if you can't afford the 1,000,000-ton ship, it's not going to help you. So right now, we're just going to be set for 1,000, because we're not in any kind of rush. There is no mineral advantage. So you'll see 1,000 is 120 of uranium and neutronium, and 2,000 is 240. So there's no mineral advantage to using larger or smaller increments. It's entirely how fast it's going to take. So as you can see, build cost is 240, mod rate is 240, so this will take a year. 1st of January, year 2. Fairly easy, fairly simple, nice and straightforward. We'll come back to shipyards once we actually start building and maintaining and working on ships. Shipyard tasks just shows you how fast, just show you ships that are being built or worked on. You can see that a Shell shipping building rate is 400 per 5,000 tons. A ship that is 5,000 tons will build at 400. A ship that is 10,000 tons will build at 800. So it's scaled based on a 5,000-ton ship. We'll come back to research in a sec. Environment, this is where you terraform. We will come back to this significantly later once we actually have a planet that we want to terraform, because it's lengthy and complex. Teams, we're not going to be, well, we don't really have enough leaders to build teams. But teams, you can do espionage to steal technology and information from aliens. We have diplomatic teams, which will build up relationships. We have xenologist teams, which will excavate ruins, and geology teams, which will do geological surveys. And I'll talk about all those later. So we can see that within Academy Level 1, we have 5 officer graduates per year. So every year, or scattered throughout the year, we are going to get 5 officers, and they're going to be distributed unevenly between naval officers, leaders, scientists, and civilian officers. No. Naval ground civilian scientists. And of course, we have our Empire-wide crewmen and junior officers. If you do not have enough of these to crew the ship, you will get conscripts, and then the ship will have reduced quality crews. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Civilian industries, this is where you have civilian contracts to tell your civilians to move around your buildings. Colonization status, whether your civilians are allowed to send, receive, or do nothing in terms of population. It has to be over 25 to be a source, otherwise it has to be a destination. You cannot make it stable if it's less than 25 as well. Industries, you can shut these down. If you shut down an industry, it will not consume workers. That's the only way to stop an industry from consuming workers, but you have to shut down the entire industry. You can't just shut down half of your refineries, you have to shut down all of them. It takes 6 months to reactivate them. So make sure you only shut them down if you're not going to be using them. Ground units. We have a couple of low techs. We're going to come back to this once we actually have some ground units to actually do something with, and training. Essentially, these tabs are the ground unit equivalent of these two. Wealth and trade, racial wealth, how much we get per year. Obviously, we are in second 11, so we haven't really earned anything. Per capita income and racial per capita income, these will increase depending on your technology and your trade. This will show you the last month, 3 and 12 of your wealth, income, and expenditure. And we'll come talk to this once we actually have some incomes and expenditures. And these are trade goods. Now, once we do a production cycle, we'll actually get some, but trade goods are transported by civilian freighters to where they are wanted. Algorithm isn't that smart, but there's some useful stuff in there. Last thing for this episode is we are going to set up our research. So we've set our industry, we've had a look at our mining. By the way, you notice that these are now orange where they were black. Orange means that the game expects you, so your usage is higher than your current stockpile. Stockpile plus production, sorry. Because you can see this is 900 and this is 0600. Your usage is higher than your stockpile plus production for this year, but the game doesn't expect you to actually run out because your annual production over the duration of the consumption is less than... So like your consumption over the duration of consumption is less than your annual production. So if this was red, for example, if the neutronium was red, then the game is saying you will run out of neutronium if you continue building as you are. Because it's all orange, it is not a concern. We are not going to run out of any of our resources, so we are producing more faster than we are actually consuming, even though we are set to consume more than we have. Right, so we set up a shipyard. Last thing we need to do is research. Who do we have? We have 4 scientists. We have a missile scientist, we have a power scientist, we have a biology scientist, and we have a logistics and ground combat. So, useful, somewhat useful, lunch lady. Lunch gentleman, I guess. So, biology and genetics, I guess we could do with terraforming, but no, not with 5 labs. So, first thing we need to do is we need to get ideally we need better power, but we also have a couple of techs that we don't immediately get because we started as a conventional. So for example, asteroid mining module, you don't actually have to research it when you start the Transnewtonian, I believe. But one of the first things we need to do is we need to get better engine technology because, well, conventional engines are absolute trash. So like asteroid miners, what are you going to do? You don't have an engine good enough to move the damn things. There's no point getting into technology. So better engine and reactor is basically the first thing you need to do. But while this is worthless right now, you do want to get other technologies that are very vital. This one is useful. It'll give you more wealth, stop you from running out easily. This one is very, very important. Increases how fast you mine. So base is 10, right? So we have 10 production. So our 400 mines will be producing 4,000 minerals per year. If we up this to 12, it'll be 400 times 12, which is like 4,200? No, way higher than that. I'm not going to do the math. But the point is, we're going to get 20% more minerals every year just by getting this tech. So useful. Research rate goes up from 200 to 240, so we are going to get 20% again, more research points for doing nothing. So this is an extremely useful tech. This one is going to be extremely useful once we actually start building ships. This one is very useful. Is going to be useful, especially early on, if we want to get it for making these take not only be cheaper but also faster. And that we're not going to get for a while. That we're not going to get possibly ever. So what do we want? I think we want the research rate. Well, here's the thing. We don't have a construction guy. We want the construction guy. We don't have one yet. Who do we have? We have a power propulsion guy. So normally, I would start off with the research rate, but because we don't have a construction guy, we're going to go with power propulsion. Now, why do we want a construction guy? See this bonus. So 20% for Stephanie, 10% for the other three. This bonus is added to the total amount of research produced by all labs under the scientist, unless they are working on their specialization, in which case that bonus is multiplied by 4. So Stephanie will give a 20% bonus when working on any project, but will give an 80% bonus when working on missile and kinetics. So that's essentially almost double your science for Stephanie. And these bonuses can get ridiculously high, right? Highest I've heard of is, I believe, about 85%. So you can see why you want to multiply your bonus by 4. So match it. Our only power guy, we're going to go with pressurized water to get that nuclear thermal. So that is underway. That is going to take about a little bit over a year. I don't think that's going to change much because we're not going to be getting any labs in year 1. So our first year is still going to be relatively quiet. I'm actually wondering whether I should shift the production. How much is it actually going to take? Let's have a look. Convert to construction factory takes 20. And we have a rate of 25. So, what do we have? 20... hang on. 250... divided by 25 is 10. So we're going to be producing about 10 of these construction facilities a year. Divide that by 360. What's 360 divided by 5? It's 100 divided by 5 is 20. 2, 4, 6, 65. So about 0.15. Okay, so it's going to take about 8 construction cycles, 8 to 10 construction cycles to get one of these converted. 10 of these, and we have construction rate of 10. So a construction rate of 10. In the first year, we are going to end up with 10 construction facilities which are going to be producing 100 production rate. So every year we're going to lose like one of these and gain 100. Well, it's 100 spread across. So we're going to go from 250 to 249, but we're going to gain 2.5. No, 25. So this is going to go up seriously quickly. So I don't think we're going to have to wait too long to get these. And what I might actually do, I might actually drop the ordnance down to 10 and the fuel refiner to 10 because we don't need those very fast. I'm going to raise the mine to 30 and I'm going to raise this to 50. So now, don't know why I closed it. Now we've got 500 divided by 20. We're going to be using 25. Multiply that by the 10. That's, yeah, so we're going to be getting 250 production across the board. Split that into 4. So we're going to be getting almost 100 just to this every year. So that's going to be significantly faster than January 21st. It's not going to take us 21 years to build this. It's going to be way less than that. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. That is our setup done. We are now going to proceed with running the game. But I will be putting a break in this episode here so we can focus this episode on purely the production overview. So that is that. Oh, and I did, in fact, set up a little empire. I added the US. I don't know why that's in negative. I did change it to negative for some reason. I added the United States and I set up to 31%. Those numbers have changed as well. Okay, that's being stupid. But I added the United States because I figure if there's probably any country that can survive an onslaught of Australian wildlife, it's probably the guys who have the nuclear weapons, the flamethrowers, and the machine guns in their homes. So put some Americans in there as well. As to the picture, I decided to go with these guys because I figure, I don't know, give it a couple of 100 years, and that's probably and a couple of 100 years of potentially genetic engineering and global domination and fighting against all humanity and, I don't know, giant gimpy bush for you, right there. Okay, so that's it for now, and I will see you in the next episode.